Most people go for walks every day. They count steps, move more, and feel like they're doing something for their health. And yet, the belly fat stays. Not slowly, not a little, but stubbornly, exactly where it is metabolically the most dangerous. So an uncomfortable question arises. What if walking itself isn't the problem at all? What if, while you're walking, your body isn't burning fat at all, but almost exclusively sugar? Because deep inside, it's not the movement itself that determines fat loss, but a biological switch. A switch that decides whether fat is released or stays stored. Most people never reach this switch, not because they don't walk enough, but because they walk in the wrong mode. That's why today isn't about training harder, not about discipline, not about willpower, but about 5 simple walking tricks that can shift the metabolism into a completely different state. A state in which belly fat begins to let go. Even if walking has never changed anything before. Belly fat is not ordinary fat. It doesn't just sit under the skin, but deep inside the abdominal cavity, wrapped around vital organs. And that's exactly what makes it so unique and so problematic. This so-called visceral fat is biologically active. It sends signals, produces inflammatory messengers, and directly influences hormonal balance. One hormone in particular reacts extremely sensitively to it: insulin. As long as insulin levels remain elevated, belly fat behaves like a locked safe. Energy can go in, but hardly ever comes back out. And this is exactly where the misunderstanding begins that so many people fail at. Many people believe that any movement automatically burns fat. But the body doesn't think in calories. It thinks in priorities. As long as sugar is available and insulin stays high, the body uses glucose, even while walking. That means you move, expend energy, feel active, but your metabolism stays in the wrong mode. Fat loss doesn't start because the biological context isn't right. So the decisive factor is not whether you walk, but the state your body is in while walking. Only when this state changes does walking become a tool against belly fat, and not just a habit. And this is exactly where a process comes into play that many people never consciously experience: the metabolic switch, the moment when the body slowly stops burning sugar and begins releasing fat. In the next section, it's exactly about this switch, how it works, why it stays blocked for most people, and why small changes while walking can be enough to activate it. This metabolic switch is not a myth. It is measurable, and it determines which energy source your body prefers. In the first hours after eating, the body almost always runs in glucose mode. Sugar is easily available, insulin is elevated, and fat burning has no priority. Movement initially changes very little about that, but the longer no new energy is supplied, the more the body begins to rethink. Insulin levels slowly drop. Cells become receptive to fatty acids again. The metabolism prepares for a shift. This moment is often described as the metabolic switch. It's not a sudden bang, but a quiet transition. Sugar fades into the background. Fat moves to the forefront. The problem is, many people never consciously reach this point, not because they're not active enough, but because their daily habits, frequent eating, constant snacking, stress, permanently block the switch. And that's exactly why walking feels like it does nothing for so many people. The body is moving, yes, but it's moving in the wrong energetic context. Walking can burn fat, but only when the hormonal framework is right, when insulin is low enough, when stress hormones aren't dominating, when oxygen is abundantly available. And this is where the good news lies. You don't have to walk faster. You don't have to walk longer. You don't have to walk harder. You have to walk differently. In the next section, we'll look at the first and most important of these differences, a factor almost no one pays attention to, even though it determines whether the body works in sugar mode or fat mode. It's something extremely simple, something you can feel immediately while walking, and something that reveals more about fat burning than any fitness watch ever could. Walking trick number 1 has nothing to do with steps, nothing with speed, and nothing with calories. It begins with something the body never lies about: breathing. While walking, there's a simple biological test. If you can still speak short sentences without gasping for air, your body is working in a very specific zone, a zone physiologists call Zone 2. In this zone, oxygen flow is high enough to burn fat efficiently. At the same time, stress hormones like adrenaline and cortisol remain low. This exact combination is crucial when belly fat is meant to be mobilized. If you walk too fast, breathing changes. It becomes shallow, restless, hectic. The body interprets this as a stress signal, and under stress, it preferentially turns to glucose, not fat. If you walk too slowly, the stimulus remains too weak. The metabolism sees no reason to change its priorities. Fat stays in the background. Zone 2 walking sits right in between. It feels unspectacular, almost too easy, and that's exactly why it's often underestimated. But in this calm zone, the body begins releasing fatty acids from storage, not explosively, not dramatically, but continuously, minute by minute. From an evolutionary perspective, this is exactly the kind of movement humans were built for. Long, steady walking in search of food. Not sprinting, not standing still, but rhythm. By paying attention to breathing while walking, you don't force the metabolism to switch. You invite it. And that's exactly why this first trick is so powerful. It doesn't change the effort, it changes the mode. In the next section, we'll look at another factor that's often overlooked, even though it has a massive impact on insulin and fat loss. It's not about movement itself, but about the moment it happens. The second walking trick has nothing to do with intensity. It has to do with timing. After every meal, something predictable happens in the body. Blood sugar rises, insulin responds, a hormone whose job is to distribute and store energy. As long as insulin remains elevated, belly fat is biochemically locked. The body has no reason to release stored energy when fresh sugar is floating in the bloodstream. This is exactly where this trick comes in. A short walk, about 10 to 15 minutes, after eating acts like a metabolic detour. Working muscles pull glucose directly from the blood. This requires significantly less insulin. The result is subtle but decisive. The insulin spike is flatter, and the lower insulin stays, the more easily access to fat reserves opens up. It's not about speed, not about distance, and certainly not about exhaustion. This walk is not a workout. It's a form of metabolic organization. Many people apply movement completely wrong. They wait until they have time, or until they feel motivated. But the right moment is often far more important than duration. A short walk after eating can be metabolically more effective than a long walk at the wrong time. This trick also explains why two people with identical activity levels see completely different results. The difference isn't the movement itself, it's the hormonal context. In the next section, we'll look at another mechanism that wakes up the metabolism without stressing it. A stimulus that signals the body to stay flexible, exactly the way it learned to be through evolution. The third walking trick breaks with a habit many people consider especially healthy: absolute uniformity. Many people walk every day at exactly the same pace, step by step, minute by minute, without any variation. For the body, this is predictable. And predictability means no reason to adapt. Gentle changes in pace alter this signal, not by sprinting, not by exhaustion, but through short phases of slightly increased speed, 20 to 30 seconds a bit faster, followed by a phase of calm walking. These small changes activate key metabolic pathways, including enzymes linked to fat burning and insulin sensitivity. At the same time, the load remains low enough to avoid stress reactions. The body becomes alert. It doesn't switch into alarm mode. It switches into adaptation mode. From an evolutionary standpoint, this mirrors natural walking. A brief increase in pace when an obstacle appears, a short acceleration to cross terrain, then calm again. Modern movement is often too sterile, too uniform, too controlled, but the metabolism loves variation as long as it remains gentle. These pace changes signal the body to stay flexible, to provide energy, and not just preserve stored reserves, but use them. In the next section, we'll look at a trick that achieves the same effect, without walking faster at all. Instead, it uses a simple principle from physics. The fourth walking trick doesn't change the pace, but the environment, a slight incline, a gentle hill, a bridge, or a few steps. What sounds trivial has a clear physiological effect. Inclines automatically activate larger muscle groups, especially the glutes and thigh muscles. These muscles have a high energy demand, and they demand this energy without driving heart rate up explosively. That's crucial. Walking faster often pushes the body into a stress-dominated state. Inclines, on the other hand, increase energy expenditure, while the metabolism remains calm. The body receives a clear signal. Energy is needed, but there is no danger. Exactly this context favors the release of fatty acids, not as an emergency reaction, but as controlled supply. Another advantage: inclines change biomechanics. Steps become more powerful. The torso straightens. More muscles work in sync. Energy flow distributes across the whole body. From an evolutionary perspective, walking was never flat. Humans moved across uneven terrain, over hills and dips. The metabolism is programmed for this. So if you don't want to, or can't, increase pace, you can use the environment, not to work harder, but to walk smarter. In the next section, we'll look at the final trick. It's subtle, almost invisible, and yet it changes the efficiency of every single step. The fifth walking trick is the most inconspicuous of all, and that's exactly why it's almost always overlooked. It has nothing to do with duration, nothing with distance, but with rhythm. Many people walk passively. Arms hang loosely. Steps are short. The upper body slightly collapsed forward. For the metabolism, this is an energy-saving signal. The body operates in conservation mode. A conscious arm and step rhythm changes this pattern immediately. Slightly longer steps, without exaggeration. Active, natural arm movement, an upright torso. Suddenly, more muscles work simultaneously, in a steady, calm cadence. Energy demand rises slightly, but consistently. And this consistency is crucial. It challenges the metabolism without triggering stress. Fat can be released without pushing the body into alarm mode. This rhythm has another effect. It stabilizes breathing, and stable breathing keeps the body in the right mode, where fat burning is preferred. Walking doesn't become harder, it becomes more efficient. With this fifth trick, all the previous ones come together. Breathing, timing, variation, environment, and rhythm interlock. No single point feels spectacular, but together, they completely change the metabolic context. In the next section, we'll look at what these 5 tricks can realistically achieve, and where their limits are, because not every body reacts the same way, and not every situation is equally suitable. These 5 walking tricks don't promise quick miracles. They don't replace medical therapy, and they're not a cure-all, but they change something decisive: the biological context in which movement takes place. When insulin stays lower, stress hormones are dampened, and the body is sufficiently supplied with oxygen. Energy priorities shift. Fat is no longer just stored, it becomes available. Many people report subtle but consistent changes in this state. The abdomen feels less tense. Energy across the day is more stable. Cravings become less frequent. Sleep improves. But there are limits. People with diabetes, especially those on medication, should not change movement or eating behavior without medical supervision. The same applies to pregnant individuals, people with severe underweight, or known metabolic disorders. This content is intended for education, not diagnosis or therapy. Every body reacts individually. Signals like dizziness, weakness, or persistent exhaustion should be taken seriously. Still, one central insight remains. Belly fat is not a sign of lacking discipline. In many cases, it's a sign that the metabolism never received the right signals. Walking is not the problem. Walking the wrong way can be. The body doesn't need more pressure. It needs more clarity. Not harsher stimuli, but smarter ones. Those who begin paying attention to breathing, timing, rhythm, and context change more than just steps. They change the way the body interprets energy. And that's where sustainable change begins. If you'd like, share in the comments when you usually walk, before eating, after eating, or at very different times. And on your next walk, don't watch the clock. Watch your body's signals. Because sometimes the path to less belly fat doesn't start with more effort, but with more understanding.